There is little cultural overlap between violent extremists abroad and violent extremists at home. But in their disdain for pluralism, in their disregard for human life, in their determination to defile national symbols, they are children of the same foul spirit.
Joining me now to talk about the absurdity of that and many other things is my friend Will Chamberlain, freshly married Will Chamberlain. He's also the senior counsel for the Internet Accountability Project. Will, honestly, as bad as as inappropriate as it is to make that comparison on 9/11 when you get a speech, it is amazing how mainstream insanity is now. That is insane. You'd expect that out of some wingnut idiot college student. That's the president of the United States of America.
Yeah, I mean, President Bush had a lot of trouble kind of distinguishing shades of gray when he was president, and I guess it's not surprising that he's just lumping in Americans he disagrees with now with the Taliban and Al-Qaeda. It's probably what explains much of the failure of his presidency and of the Iraq War and so many other things he did. But still, just to hear it is very jarring, especially from someone who used to be a Republican president. I mean, this is a person who said absolutely nothing over the course of the last 10 to 15 years, nothing, especially recently, about Antifa and violent riots in the streets and protests. But all of a sudden, the January 6th event is this unique danger that is comparable to 9/11 or comparable to radical Islamist terrorism. It's an appalling statement. He should be ashamed of himself.
Will, look, you live in the D.C. area. Explain this to me because I cannot understand it. What is it about that day that has so many of the people, left and right, just completely up in arms still? They feel like it was some personal thing. And it's not like it's a day to celebrate. I'm not saying that, but they've blown this thing up so big, and I don't understand it. What is the mentality I'm missing here?
I don't fully understand it either. I mean, I feel like it starts from a kind of cute communication strategy of, oh, we're going to call this an insurrection because we can. And then all of a sudden, that cute little word game becomes actually what the progressive line is on the question. And then you're a bad person if you don't believe that this is an insurrection. And it's sort of like everybody's playing a game of chicken with each other where they don't properly treat in their view, treat this with the severity it deserves, and they're not being good progressives. So you get this ridiculous escalation to the point that the thing is as bad as 9/11, when it really was, it's a riot. Like all riots are bad. I don't like riots, but that's the most accurate description of what happened on January 6th was a riot that would have been controlled by maybe double the number of police officers without too much of an issue. And a riot in which none of the rioters actually murdered anyone or anything like that. So, I mean, the comparison to 9/11 is just absolutely bizarre.
Will, I used to absolutely disagree with you publicly about your seize the endowment strategy for universities. I have since obviously come around on this because I feel like these institutions must be razed to the ground. And this latest video I'm about to play for you just cemented it for me.
When talking about 9/11, what do you think we should avoid?
I think we should avoid a lot of more gruesome facts.
Avoiding kind of placing blame.
Will?
Wait, what?
How have we cheated our youth so badly? And I understand they're adults by now and they have to take accountability for what they think, but we have cheated our youth so much. We have morons now, insane communist morons at 20.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like they've been uneducated. Like, these are the kind of things that if you just were a normal person and just ran through your life and then showed up at 20 and somebody asked you, should someone else be blamed for flying planes into buildings on 9/11? You'd be like, yes, of course, that's quite obvious that should be the case. And yet somehow the 18 years of education have managed to unsolve the problem of their education and lead them to think that no one actually is to blame for that. There's a slew of things. I mean, I think in general, the big shift that I've seen in conservatism generally is, going from, we're going to stick to these principles no matter without examining the principles, one, and then two, even if they lead to our own defeat, to a much more pragmatic conservatism, which I think you have adopted and many others have adopted, which is more like, wait a second, universities are destroying our children. Well, then we as a conservative movement should be deeply adversarial to the universities and seek to use government to to at least unwind certainly all the government support for those universities, but go further and actually use government to create the kind of world we want, rather than just abdicating that entirely.
Okay, Will, it's one thing for you to say it. It's one thing for me to say it. It's not that we're without any influence at all, but we're not elected. Are any of our elected officials starting to think along these lines? I understand we don't have Mitch McConnell. I get that. But are we starting to make gains with things like this in our elected officials?
I mean, it's challenging. They find it easy to oppose things like critical race theory, but it's not clear that they're willing to actually impose their will on these universities, demand things. I think something as simple as like you know, there's a million different diversity requirements that go into public employment, and that goes to universities too. Well, there needs to be a political diversity requirement, especially at a place like a university. If you haven't hired, say for example, if your staff isn't at least 25% Republicans on the professorial staff, well, then that needs to be remediated, and you can't hire any more progressives until you've gotten to 25%. That would really put a damper on progressive hiring, and that would be one way to change things. Another thing entirely would be to remove the subsidies. But I mean, you start from the perspective that, oh, we've completely as a movement abandoned the universities and our ability to influence young people, and instead left it to Marxists, and the debate really is between Marxists on the left and then liberals and mainstream Democrats on the right at these universities. And we're not even in the scene. We're not present. That needs to change, or the entire university structure needs to be reformed so that it's just not necessary.
Hey, thanks so much for watching The First on YouTube. If you liked what you saw, go ahead and like and subscribe. You heard me. Like it, subscribe. You'll get a lot more of it and a lot more of me. Thanks.